when we are talking about the history of clothing, another important topic which we need to discuss is the British rule and the dress code. See, when the Britishers had conquered India, they must have given certain code of dress to the Indians. They must have adopted certain things from us, but when it comes to intermingling in the initial stages, it always leads to conflicts. Because of this, social misunderstandings keep on increasing. For example, if I take the context of the headgear, the Britishers wore a hat, whereas the Indians used to wear a turban. But when the Indians wore the turban, it was not for the fact that it was to save themselves from the heat, but turban signified a respect, a social respect. But for the hat, it was meant for taking off whenever they met somebody superior. But the turban could not have been taken off even if met by superiors, which means the conflict or the contrary meanings had started here itself. An Englishman, when he met somebody superior, took off his hat and showed his sign of respect. But for an Indian, to take off his turban was almost like death, because the turban was not a headgear. It was, as I said, a mark of respect. So here the conflict started because of the different meanings to the clothes that the Indians and the Britishers wore. Next is regarding the shoes. A British gentleman was always dressed up in such a manner that he wore perfect shoes, well polished shoes, but for the Indians, the shoes had to be taken off whenever they went to somebody superior, that is in the king's court or in the temple. The shoes were meant to be taken off. But this was not the case with the Britishers. For them, taking off shoes was against their cultural identity, because a well-dressed gentleman was a British gentleman according to them, with proper shoes. But the same shoes had to be taken off by the Indians as a mark of respect to the person to whosoever's house they had gone to. Next is that the British officials in the beginning, when they came to India, they started wearing the Indian dress and they also started following the Indian cultural traditions. But later on, when they got settled properly here, they defied it and they started wearing their own dress code, because they felt that this was the way that their cultural identity could be kept intact. That is, the white masters of India wanted that they should remain a pure Englishman, and thus in the beginning, whatever their initial problems were, later on they overcame and thus started wearing their own dress. Now Lord Emerist, once he came to know that the Indians used to take off their shoes in front of the superiors, he gave a decree saying that the shoes be taken off whenever an Indian came and met Lord Emerist. But this was not followed with strictness. If an Indian wanted to do so, he could, and if he did not want, he did not do it. But when Lord Dalhousie came, he took it with strictness, and shoe respect was made a must, which meant that forcing the Indians to follow certain cultural dress code was against the ego of the Indians. Well, when in the Surat court, a Parsi man named Manakji Kausji entity defied that he is not going to take off his shoes in the court. He was not allowed to enter. And he was told that if they used to take off or if they take out shoes before entering their house, before entering the temple, then why should they not do it as a mark of respect in the court of an English judge? The answer was very clear, that the shoes were not allowed inside home or in the temple because of two reasons. The shoes collected dirt and filth of the roads, so it was not hygienic to carry it inside the home, which was spick and clean. But the another thing was that leather was not considered as something very pure by the Indians. Therefore, also it was not allowed inside Indian homes and temples. But this could not have been understood by the British masters, and they believed that if they were showing respect in a particular manner in a dress code, they must do the same to them without understanding the logic behind it.